Welcome to Gravy for the Brain Oceania, The Interview, and VO Life. I'm Toby Ricketts, your host, and it's my pleasure to bring you people who are movers and shakers in the voiceover industry from all around the world and all different kind of parts of the voice industry, from voices through to agents, through to voiceover marketplaces. Speaking of voiceover marketplaces, I've got a very exciting guest today. It's Rolf Veldman, who is CEO of Voice123. Hi there, Rolf.
Yeah, nice to have to be here.
Cool.
Nice segue as well. Like, speaking of marketplaces, well done with the intro. I really like that.
There you go. And it's described as the world's first and largest voiceover marketplace.
Yeah.
Is that right? You've got those two metrics.
Yes. We've been in here since 2003. Actually, our founders, Alex and Tanya, started it way back when. Tanya was a voice actress herself, wanted to cut out a middleman. Alex was an engineer, and they said, let's combine forces. And out of that came Voice123. And we're still the largest, depending on what metric you use, but we're so open that compared to other platforms, we calculate it slightly different. So the number of people on our platform is maybe the biggest. I don't think we have the biggest revenue because we don't try to maximize revenue on every part of the deal. But yeah, we're the largest platform, largest network.
Nice, cool. So we met in quite a funny way, because I met you at the One Voice conference in 2018 on a boat going from like one place to another across the Thames. And I think you introduced yourself as like you just started. I had the impression you were an intern at Voice123.
Yeah. Oh, that's how I felt. I was basically there incognito. So it was a weird time for Voice123 because there's been a rotation of management for a couple of years in a row, and because the founders sort of moved out of the company and tried to focus on other endeavors while still being involved in Voice123 from a board level perspective. So, and they keep looking for a new leadership. The previous leader, they just parted ways with, and they knew me for a while and had pitched me to become part of Voice123 as a general manager at first, and maybe CEO later. And they said, but it's important that you get to know the voiceover industry first, and that you get acquainted with the kind of people in the voiceover industry, because you really have to love this industry for you to work in it, because it's quite particular. Right? So they sent me to the conference in London to meet up with people and to basically interact with as many people as possible, build some relationships, and see if I would enjoy it, would like it. And I sort of didn't tell anybody who I was. Well, not didn't tell, but I would try to be a fly on the wall while also connecting with people. And you're the first one of the first I talked to. You had all these great ideas about the future of the industry and what could change, and you were very like excited about all the potential there was around. So I was like, oh, this is not a stagnant industry. There's a lot that can move and that can change. I want to be part of it. It's partly because of the conversation I had with you. So either people can blame or thank you for having me as part of this industry now.
Well, I feel honored, and it was kind of a masterstroke, because I feel like our conversations would have been quite different maybe if I had known. So
yeah, I think
you got an honest opinion from me, which is quite good. Which I still do have. I think one of the voiceover industry is like it's such a friendly kind of industry, and everyone. There's no real shooting each other down. Like it's mostly supportive. I think because like if you don't get if you're looking at the same level as someone and you don't get the gig, it's just because you weren't right for the part. So there's no kind of personal stuff in there.
That's true.
So what?
Sometimes my title gets in the way though. So that's why it was nice in the beginning. So if you have a title CEO, then people think, okay, CEO, that's important. I also don't know what I'm doing, right? So I'm just trying to learn there. And it makes it easier if that title is not in the way in our conversation. So I really enjoyed how we got to know each other.
Totally. No, absolutely. And it was quite a different story at the 2019 one, where you stood up and people kind of threw fruit at you.
Yeah, you were saying friendly industry. I don't know. It felt like a pitchfork and flame kind of situation. But yeah, really depends on who you are. But it was right. It was the right emotion for the time.
Yeah, exactly. So where did you come from? Just briefly, like what's your part of history of entrepreneurship and company running?
So I was actually trained as an historian in the Netherlands. And so I don't think you can get any further away from being an entrepreneur than being an historian. Besides the fact that if you train to be an historian and you graduated in my case in 2011, it's when the economic crisis also hit Europe. There were no jobs, and there's never a job application that says we need an historian unless you want to be a teacher. So that made me do all kinds of things. I worked for NGOs. I worked in bars. I did all these kind of small end jobs to get get to know what I really wanted to do. I ended up in government, as most historians do, and I realized how scarily predictable that was for the coming years, decades. Like as soon as you're in, there's a path for the next 20 years, and it was kind of a bit constraining. I felt. So I had in 2015, I was in the process of becoming a project manager in one of the government agencies, and I sort of told them no, I quit, which was a kind of a great moment. And instead of getting a raise, I just quit my job, and my then girlfriend, by now wife, and I decided to fulfill a dream that we had of traveling. We were in a very fortunate position that we had saved some money, and she's originally from Latin America, so we wanted to go back there, travel around. Reached Colombia after 10 months and decided to make or break Colombia, meaning that we wanted to find a job there to make us self-sustainable there. I found a job as an English teacher, again working also at an NGO, War Child. And most of my work until then in governments and different companies was helping to digitalize those kind of organizations. Back in 2000s, most people still work on paper, and I think a lot of people still do work on paper, and trying to make that switch to digital work was mostly organizational and behavioral change. And that's what I did. It sounds kind of boring, but it's actually quite fun if you're in the middle of it. Yeah. And then in Colombia, I met Alex. I knew one Colombian who introduced me to Alex. So it's very happenstance. And we had a conversation. We decided not to work together straight away, but I told him, if you ever wanted to take this remote work to the next level, let me know and I can help. So 10 months later, in 2016, I joined his holding company to build a bunch of frameworks to help him operate in a remote setting. So how to do leadership, how to do strategy, how to do project management, all these internal management stuff. So my background is mostly from a leadership training perspective. And by the time I built those frameworks, I said, well, it's kind of easy to tell people what to do. Maybe I should try to do it myself. And I had pitched that to, in this case, Alex and Tanya, the founders, and they decided to train me for a couple of years and then put me at a position in Voice123. It's actually my first big entrepreneurial endeavor where I'm at the helm of a large existing company. Before that, I was mostly in an advisory role, consultancy role, or had part of the responsibility. And most of my training for here was on the job, getting myself ready to become an in Voice123 and having a bit of remote baggage. Does that sort of answer it?
Yeah,
still kind of vague, but
no, yeah. That's interesting to hear where you've come from. And I mean, you've come from like kind of left field in terms of like you say, like turning up at the One Voice conference, like to learn about the voice industry, to see if you wanted to be a part of it. And I imagine you've done a hell of a lot of learning over the last sort of 3 years, or 4 years probably.
Well, I wasn't completely new to it, of course, because I knew the company. But working in a company for voice is different than having an opinion about the voiceover industry, right?
Or formulating like a roadmap of where it should go.
Yeah, or a vision, like where should it go. So, no doubt, I had to learn fast, and I think it was possible because I started from the standing point that I don't know, right? So that's why I talked to you, and I talked to all the other voice actors, and try to talk to as many producers as well, trying to get that input, try to see what are problems, what are the visions that most people have about the future, and how do they correlate, and where's the opportunity on a business perspective. And that's, I think, if you talk to enough people, a vision sort of formulates. I think one of my skills is I can, as an historian, you have to absorb a lot of information and turn it into one narrative. So that skill set finally came into use.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So now that you have had this time to sort of, to ruminate and to learn, firstly, where is Voice123 at this moment? And like, what are the kind of big plans you have for it? I think that's the one question I should take an hour for this, maybe, because that's quite a big one. So where it is now, I think I have to say where it was when I joined. So basically what Alex and Tanya had done is they had built Voice123, and let's say in 2014, 15, they decided, okay, we want to go into other fields of work.
But before they did that, they tried to create a newer version of Voice123. And the idea was that would replace Voice123, and that was what is now Bunny Studio, Voice by. They thought, okay, that's the natural progression of whatever Voice123 is right now. And then they realized those are two completely different things. We should separate them. They can exist on their own. Potentially, they can compete in the future, but they're different. What the result of that was is because they were so focused on building other companies that Voice123 was basically left in maintenance mode, right? So it existed. It's a self-service platform. So voice actors and clients, they connect with each other. What we have to do is make sure that technology works and that people are finding ways to talk to each other. But we were at that stage in Voice123 that if we would just want to change the copy on the platform, it would implode the platform almost. So it was so outdated because it was built in 2003 and we had to really go for a new version.
Wow. Yeah.
So I joined in that process of rebuilding Voice123. And one of the things that we wanted to do is set it up for growth in the future. And it came from the idea that if we want to build an open marketplace where the relationship is first and foremost, we need to provide more and more tools for the people on the platform to basically build their business there. We always had in mind a version of whatever Shopify is for small business owners. We should be that for business owners at an even smaller level, which are basically creative freelancers, right? And they manage their own business. VO entrepreneurship is a very common term there. I think it's slightly misused. It's always about marketing, but it's more about managing the business yourself. And we wanted to build a platform that was able to add more and more and more tools to it. And that's where we are right now. So we've launched a new version in 2019, and we stabilized that new version. Now, for the next couple of years, it's all about adding new functionalities to this platform for our, in this case, voice creative, but that's too small of a market. There needs to be more for them to do more, extract more out of their own industry, position them at the front instead of being the middleman. Like many other platforms, there's this big transactional model. We don't want to go there. We just want to be a true marketplace that acts as a network where people can connect. Now, practically, that means that we need to think about tooling for admin from voice actors. Like, it's wild to me that most people still work on a spreadsheet, right? Whenever they do their finances and do their taxes. It's wild to me that most people are focused on finding a first client when the way to stay in voiceover, in my opinion, is to nurture the second client. The second time you work with the same client, right? That's how you stay in voiceover. So we want to set people up in a way that they can really manage their own career on Voice123. That's the idea.
That's very interesting. Cool. That's cool because that's
the shortest version.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've noticed these little bits of functionality being rolled out. Like, the most obvious one is the where clients can pay and you hold the money and there's a job through the platform as opposed to just putting people in touch and they sort it out between themselves, which is I guess tending towards the more that the other models, the other platforms do. There was
a huge decision for us because we always thought, okay, we should never do that, right? We we look too much at other companies in the industry saying, oh, that's what they do, we are different. Then we realized there's always a use case for it, right? There's a certain type of companies that buy voiceover at a very high volume. They don't want to pay 25 times a day. They just want to pay Voice123 and us to release that money to the voice actor. So we try to do it at cost. And that's why our fee is so low. The other part of that is there's always going to be a connection with a client that you might have never worked with and you want to have a sort of a guarantee for it. So maybe in that initial transaction, you're going to use this. So we realized as long as we make it optional, then we never make it an obligatory thing on Voice123 to have to use this, then it adds the service.
Yeah.
So we became a bit more open-minded on what we should and should not do. I think that's a big change compared to the past.
Absolutely. And it does give more power to both the client and the voiceover artist. It is definitely, I've definitely felt pressure from clients who they just want to pay with a company credit card, which is quite hard if you're not set up for it as a new voiceover. It's very hard to take credit cards without Stripe accounts and all that sort of stuff. So it does streamline that, which has been really useful. I've seen some of the other sort of modular functions that have just sort of drip feeded out. And I was quite excited to see I was going through all of the different parts that I didn't even know existed of Voice123. And there was we're
good at not being very vocal about what we're doing.
Exactly. And there was like the rollout of stuff.
I think you're referring to the stats page, maybe?
Is that live now? The stats page?
No, that's what we're working on now. Again,
cool.
not with the idea to just show this is how you're working on Voice123. But not just to show, okay, these are how many likes your auditions got, but also like, hey, this is the money that you made on Voice123. This is the average budget that your market is in, and this is the average budget that, let's say if you're not in animation, but you want to be in animation, this is what's happening on Voice123. So we want to be really transparent about what's on Voice123 for people to make a better decision about that.
That's brilliant. I mean, and it's good to see what features are coming up. Like there was also the sample transcripts. The video files I was really interested in because I'm all about video these days, and endorsements obviously has already happened, and that's been really big this week on Voice123. The other big thing, which segues beautifully into my next topic, is AI voice character, which is, would you like to have a digitalized version of your voice? And that's all it says. Leave us a comment. And you did an excellent webinar, I think about 6 months ago, possibly longer ago, with Hugh from Gravy for the Brain UK, about the future of voice with regards to TTS and what Voice123 was doing in that space. And I was really like taken aback. I was like, I had no idea that this was happening in the space and what you were doing, but it sounded really interesting. So for those who haven't heard what the experiment kind of was, do you want to just bring us up to speed and tell us where it's at now?
So again, I'm an historian, so I'll go one step further back. But basically, when I joined in 2016, we already told each other, okay, there's an existential threat to the voiceover industry in the way that we operate our business, right? So Voice123 is a marketplace where the more voice actors there are, the happier our shareholders are, because that means there's more revenue, right? That's the simplest version of what it is. So if there's AI and that can computerize all of these voices, will that take away a part of the market, or how will that behave? And is that going to be a threat to the way that we do business on Voice123? So ever from the start, I had my eye on this, and I figured it might potentially be as big as what we were ourselves in 2003, where I felt that becoming a digital platform in a very much local network orientated industry is going to be quite disruptive. Is AI going to be the same thing? And I didn't want to be on the sideline looking at it. I would prefer to make it as transparent as possible, but host it on Voice123, because I wouldn't mind being the place where if it happens, it happens. With that in mind, I was looking at AI a year ago thinking, okay, it's most likely going to have an impact on certain verticals of voiceover. So like IVRs, it makes sense that might be disrupted by whatever AI voice is, right? But what happens if AI goes into promos, right? Short form promos, where into commercial work, that's where money is being made by voice actors, and we'll go there. How much does it cost to run an AI program for the people that have those AI models? We think it's very cheap, but it's actually still very expensive. It was a year ago and it still is now. What moment do they become profitable? Meaning, is it even viable that it's become, if it adds to the space? Is there a new potential for AI? Meaning a whole new category of types of voices and type of voiceover work? All of those questions we had, but I could only hypothesize of it. I could only talk to people, and I didn't think that was enough. So what we did in 6 months ago is that we thought, how about we start showing it to the people who decide what the future of AI is going to be, and that's the people who buy these services. So we figured if we can have like 10 to 20 of AI profiles on Voice123, and they're just public profiles, everybody can visit them, and they're purely AI voices, so they have a playlist with a couple of samples in there. And how about in our project form, when clients asked to receive auditions, we asked them, would you also like to receive a AI version of an audition? If they toggle yes, then whenever a client requests 50 proposals, we send them 50 plus one AI. And then afterwards, we ask them, how good did you think it was? Would you ever hire this kind of voice? At what stage would you hire it? If it's not good enough, what would you pay for it? And what would you use it for? And I figured if we have all that information for 6 months of work and we make that public, then if you're a voice actor and you're building your business on corporate VO and all these clients say, I'm going to use it for that, then you know that you need to change your game. but maybe these clients are telling us, no, we're not going to use it. We're only going to use it to get a taste of the voice. Then it's sort of changing auditioning forever, right? Instead of us auditioning 90 times to get a job, maybe what clients really want is to have a taste in the script of a like-minded sounded voice for, let's say, low acting type of gigs. Then maybe that's where it's going to go. But the nature of that experiment was finding out that information and making it public. And then my personal end goal there is, of course, people start to equate Voice123 a bit with AI, right? Secondary is, ideally, by the time voice actors are ready to record a version of their, an AI version of their voice, it happens with partners that we recommend, because as with any business, let's say they're morally right and morally wrong businesses, but people that take advantage or people that don't. So we wanted to set us up as to be basically the network that enables what is essentially the future of VO, in my opinion, and that is where AI plays a role. And it goes into, so the report is ready in data, but it's not ready in visuals. So we're still working on it, but ideally we're publishing it within the next 2 to 3 weeks. And based on that report,
can't give us any scoops, can you?
Yeah, no, I will. There's a couple of scoops there. I think one of the things is that, like I mentioned already, IVR is very obvious. What the thing that was scary to me was that, so we asked everybody could say yes to this, right? And only 1 or 2% of our clients enabled it. So I mean, that's a very low section of it. And even within that small section of clients, whenever we had an open field of leave any of their comments or feedback, and most of them said, hey, this is a threat, don't do this, we need to protect the voice actor, how will payments work? So I love that there was a sense of we need to take care of the people, so perfect. But the scary part about it is that they also collectively said, we're never going to pay more than $1 a minute, which, depending on the type of work, that's going to be quite impactful. Of course, this is biased because AI is just not good enough right now, but it will be in a year or two from now. So the prices will go up. I believe, based on this report, that AI will work just as a new category in voiceover world, where you have your premium talent and you have your standard AI voices. Depending on how well you've recorded it, you can start selling it at a higher price point. But what I learned is they want to use it for roughly 3 or 4 kind of things. Very standard ones are IVRs and placeholders, especially in gaming, right? Where there's an early developed game and we need a couple of voices to really get funding for this game. That's when we use it. But again,
like an anime.
Placeholders. Yeah, something like that. And I think that's how gaming studios set up their business as well. Like, you want to create a character for a game. Part of that is create the voice of that character. And ideally, these gaming companies want to have that an AI version because that's real time. But there's a very small market. The other part is translations. So I assume you don't speak 20 languages. Let's say you do, bless you. But it would be nice to get to a stage where we can hear a Dutch version of you, right? And potentially you can hear, the technology again is not there, but that's the biggest requested feature so far. Like, I could use this if I need to do a promo in 20 different languages. I can just work with one actor, right? There's the convenience. The other part is short form promos, meaning 5 to 7 second audio, specifically on mobile. It goes very specific, but mobile is the fastest growing segment in audio and video. Fastest growing type of advertising on the marketeers is 5 to 7 second piece of content, video or audio, and that's where AI most likely will sit.
This is for like Amazon products, isn't it? Because that's the new field, is like these 5 to 7 seconds, like product summary videos I've heard, which is
might be, but it's also on your streaming services. On whenever you play a mobile game and you have to pay for, like, you need to pay for an app or get the ad. That's where a lot of this will be.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And I think there's two or three ways that our voice actors should work with AI. We're going really deep already, but I just want to. I'm also a bit excited about this topic. So there's one way where, which was my original plan, but so far there's only limited demand for it from the client side, and that is, let's say you, Toby, you want to cater to those gaming markets, or you want to cater to to more short form, low acting kind of projects. And you can do versions of your voiceover. So let's say you have Wizard Toby, you have conversational Toby, and those are just characters that you have on your own website. I, as a client, try that script. I upload a script, I download that, and it is, of course, watermarked. So I cannot download it without your approval. You approve, and there's a licensing structure for us to both benefit from the result of it. That's one way to do it. So actually licensing per character. But technology is getting already good enough that you, as a creative, whether you're the director or the voice actor, can already play around as if it was a desk, up the happiness or the sadness of the voice, etc. You can already go a bit further.
Levers that you can pull in terms of prosody and absolutely. Yeah.
So you might not have to recreate all these different kind of characters, but you can just have one voice and work from that. And then the licensing structure still works, depending on what it's for. So imagine you want to do an audiobook, and you want to have the beginning and the end, you want to have real high quality. So let's say that's you, but there's also sections in that book where it's fine for you to use an AI version of it. So you can do a mix. Part of this project, because of the fast turnaround time, I need to already get this done. I'm going to do part of that is going to be the AI Toby, and then the other part is going to be real Toby. There's one way to do it, a mix. And the other one, which might be the most offensive, I don't know, but the most offensive is, I think that it will replace a section of auditioning, because auditioning is where the work is, right? Auditioning is where you commit and you pitch and you do your work as an actor, you hone your craft. But I really sense that there's a large section of clients who really don't know what quality is. Right? I was also new to this industry. I don't know what is good. I need somebody to tell me what is good, and it's already sounding better than what I sound like. So, okay, let's go for it for this project. Really depends. If it's a big commercial or a big branded project, you won't do that. But for these smaller businesses, and let's say it's an in-house corporate VO video or corporate training that exists for one time, I'm going to use an AI version of that. So I want to, instead of wanting to interact with a lot of people, I'm going to just check what they sound like in the AI and then book Toby. So it might be a marketing gimmick. It might be a way to convert people and to introduce a lot of people to your voice without you having to audition constantly to everything. But that's one way I think I can see it go. And like all of these kind of functionalities, we want to test on Voice123 with the voice actors that wanting to work with it, so they can be beneficiaries of it. Because the worst version of all of this is like a Shutterstock for AI, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Where you just have a catalog of AI voices and you pay $29 and you use that AI voice. Yeah. I mean, of course, that's always going to be there's going to be, that company's going to exist.
But ideally, arguably, don't they? Like, kind of all of the kind of like, and we can get into the details of, because it is around us already. There's the sort of speech hellos and everything that's based on Talkatron 2, which is like Google's sort of the one that they developed, which has quite a distinctive sound because it doesn't produce audio at full range. It doesn't. It's limited to about 32 kilohertz, I think. So you can hear that it's kind of it's limited in terms of its frequency range from a processing angle, from just that they designed it on that kind of platform. And at the moment, I'm hearing the odd YouTube explainer video where I think it's a real voice, and then something will happen. I'll be like, that's not a real voice. Now listen closer, and it's very good, but it is definitely an AI voice. And so, like, where do you
or
see...
a version of it that's like what the script does, right? The script is basically your voice, and then it's power edited with AI.
Right. Oh, interesting.
And just to go for the Google example, already 2 years ago we saw profiles on Voice123 where it's just a person using a program to audition.
Is that right? Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. People, and I've talked to people from other marketplaces, they already see those use cases. Wow. We have to check them and then say, okay, use your real voice or state that you're using software to do this.
Right.
But from the voice actor side, this is already happening. And that suspicion that you had about YouTube is what a lot of people in the last 3 to 4 years from the client side have been asking us about that. This audition seems fake. This seems fake. That seems fake, even though it's not fake. But it's one of the reasons why I think conversational style of voiceover is now so popular. It's like a very natural
true.
opposition to it, because it's the hardest one to crack.
Yeah.
And it's the most easy to recognize as definitely being human.
That's very interesting. Actually, just going back to like your test that you ran for 6 months, did you expect that there would be some kind of outrage from the voiceover community? Because we're a sensitive bunch. And did you get any pushback?
So we tried to go with Great for the Brain, go on a workshop with you. I planned a lot of talks that week because I figured the way normally information spreads is that it spreads through these kind of pocket communities that exist everywhere, whether it's Facebook, Reddit, or whatever group people are talking, whatever forum people are talking about. Even if we put a white banner on Voice123, so far people don't go for their news about VO to Voice123. So we wanted to make it alive in those communities by going on those talks. I expected a lot of pushback, and there's only pushback when people see Voice123 does AI experiment. What they then see is they're ruining industry. But it's a bit nuanced. If you have the context, okay, they're trying to expose where AI might change, and they're being transparent about what is happening and what's coming out of it, and they're going to share the report with everybody. Then it starts starting to make sense. So we got limited pushback until I think 4 weeks ago. Suddenly there was an uproar in a couple of groups, and we were spammed with people being really angry at us for doing the experiment. We sat down with the people that were mad, explained, hey, this is what we're doing, and then it was okay again. But so far the pushback has been not as wild as I expected, because I also think people understand that VO is not a static industry. Right? VO changes, and this is just the next change. If we do it correctly, it could be a change for the good.
I mean, I often compare it to the taxi industry turning into the Uber industry, turning into the self-driving industry. And it's quite similar with voiceover in terms of it used to be agency, studio, led, and now it's kind of voiceover marketplace led. And, the next logical step is the AI thing. But there will still be people that drive cars for hundreds of years. And, it's not going to replace everything, but it will be interesting to see where it does sort of infiltrate, if you like, and where it does sort of and where it is the best solution. Because, I mean, the place I'm really sold on TTS is like dynamic TTS within gaming. Because you can create these worlds where you can meet like a stranger, and they're literally like an AI stranger, basically a chatbot, but in a game, which actually talks and actually reacts and does all the normal things. But, you don't have a voice actor voicing 80 million words of script in order to make that
there you go.
possible.
And you must have already also done, maybe in your work, a dynamic audio ad, right? Where they want to, depending whether it rains, sun shines, or where you are, and they want to run that ad, and you need to record hundreds of lines for a 10-second ad. Like that's another place where AI can solve that part, right? But it has to be short form even, and in those games, I think people accept it because it's a fictional realm, right? So it's okay that the voice also sounds sort of foreign. But you also, I think, especially in educational content, you see a change where in the past, the people creating educational content were all about the content and not the performance. And in the recent years, most educational content companies realized that the quality of our course is not only determined by the content, but by the medium of the content. So a well-performed educational course is way better than a educational course that just is content streamed at you, right? So while you could say, okay, people need to just absorb the information, yet let's use AI, there's companies on the other side that say, no, this needs to be highest quality content. We need a proper actor here that really does the work. So like you said, there will always be work in VO for a human. I feared at the beginning, to stay within your metaphor of the car, that maybe human VO was a horse. Right. And AI was the car, but I'm off that track.
That's good. And so where do you see is the cutting edge of AI voice at the moment? Because we are still in the uncanny valley a little bit of voiceover, and that the closer it gets to reality, the kind of creepier it gets when you realize it's not real voiceover. Do you think, within a year or two, we will have genuinely unpickable, voiceover, at least sort of straight voiceover in inverted commas, rather than adding too much emotion at this stage?
But we have that in many places already, right?
Right. And
to your ears, in your ears, there's uncanny valley. To experts' ears, there are, but most people consuming AI are not experts. Most people consuming audio are not experts. So a lot of content is already being created with that, and we don't have to go over that threshold for most of the content. I try to, whenever I talk to either with our potential investors or with other partners, I always talk about it's a very simplified version of it. But let's say if you do voice acting from a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being acting, 4 being acting, and then 3 being acting, and then 1 and 2 is minimal acting required. Then that's where we can the AI is already solving those problems. And I don't think it's maybe because of gimmicks, AI will attack the category of like proper acting and required VO, but I don't think in the long term it will. Maybe as a hype because AI is cool now, but in long term it won't. And in 1 and 2, it's already it's already there, but it's just too expensive to run proper AI voiceovers.
Yeah. And I think if I've worked with a TTS company and am still sort of talking to them about how you train an AI to do sort of more acting, like what levers can you pull, and because I teach a lot of voiceover, like I have enough trouble telling experienced voiceovers like how to breathe more acting and life into this. And if I'm having trouble telling another human how to do it, imagine trying to tell a software engineer who's going to try and tell a computer how to do it. Like if you can't actually define what the X factor is that you're trying to get, then it's very hard to actually, to make a computer just do that without, I guess, having machine learning, things and just showing them acting and saying, this is what the actor's doing now. But that's a much more complex feat than just, say, talking and matching it to what's on the page. So,
but imagine you're getting the job of having to deliver a full audio file already delivered, right? You can choose whether you're going to do AI or Toby, but they're equally good. And then this becomes like a super editing program, right? Where you can hand certain parts of yourself, where you can give yourself just a little bit more range. And then you can see the function, but then it requires your ear and your vision for that voice as a creative to turn it into a proper voiceover. And imagine them being the director with those kind of skills instead of working with the actor. And if AI is good enough, I can do this myself. Now, there's only a very limited group that can do this. And I don't foresee any future where everybody has the ability to turn, even though the technology is there. If you put me in charge of building a commercial and then putting the right voiceover on it, I'm going to fail 10 out of 10 times, even with the best possible technology, because I'm not a voice actor. I'm not a producer. I don't have that ear. So it's already here. But there's always a use case for people who are well trained in a craft, and you having that unique ability of not even getting your directions out of your head is allowing you to be in the center of this whole creative process anyway. So I think it's always going to be fun. And I think voice actors keep forgetting that when they're always the most expert person in the room when it comes to voiceover when they work with clients, right? So most clients are not in the voiceover industry. They just need a voiceover. But as a voice actor, you're always the expert. And if you're able to leverage that expert position, then AI is like a super cool tool.
I do worry that like the breeding ground for voiceover actors who, I want to start being a voiceover actor. I'm going to get myself a home studio and I'm going to put myself out there, has been these small jobs which don't require much acting, like getting runs on the board, doing IVR, doing explainer videos, etc. And I do wonder whether that's going to cut off, not exactly the supply, but it's going to, I don't know, shatter the dreams of a lot of people and who just won't get work at that lowest tier. And Fiverr, I don't know what Fiverr voiceovers, make, because that's traditionally the sort of position that Fiverr has occupied as that kind of, lower fees, lower amount of acting required, etc.
You're 100% right. And there's a lot of people joining the industry now, I think at a higher pace than ever before, because actually the biggest revolution of the last couple of years is nothing to do with technology. It's the reduced price of hardware, right? It's easier to set up it's still expensive, but it's way less expensive than it was to record a voice at a minimum required quality in your home. Some people do it with phone. That's not good enough to me, but for others, it's good enough. They just want to have the acting style. Or you can buy a very minimalistic mic for a couple of $100, and that's how you can get started in the industry. So those obstacles have been removed. Now AI will most likely sweep in and take most of those low earning jobs. So people get disappointed earlier, and they might need to step it up to stay in the industry. But yeah, I think those trends it's going to be interesting to watch them happen simultaneously. Logically, you would say AI is going to be the Fiverr of the future, right? But I have no idea whether that's going to be the case.
So I want to get back to newbies and training and stuff, because you've got a new guide that got released this week, which is really useful. But I just want to stay with TTS a bit, because like we're both very passionate in the space, and people want to know, what's coming. Are you aware of any AI voices or TTS companies that have effectively, that they haven't trained their voice on a voice actor, so they haven't had to make any moral decisions, they haven't had to train it for the thousands of hours of voice actors, they've literally just made one that talks? Are there any digital first AIs that you're aware of?
People have tried it. It's incredibly shit. So you've recorded. Sorry for my language. You recorded TTS yourself, right? So that's not that's quite hard, right? Because it's very consistent performing it's a skill that you need to have, and we see this. So we see companies that just want to get a set of audio and then train a model, and that model almost always doesn't work. Now, there's a couple of companies that might get better at it, but so far, all of them had to make the moral decision to work with actors, and they will continue to do so, I think. But I think it changes. Right now, it's kind of a weird vibe. So you got paid for that TTS project, right? Basically, sorry, I'm not trying to insinuate anything. No. Most people get paid for working on a TTS project, especially for a brand. Well, that makes sense. But now people also get paid to train a model of TTS, right? So do this 8,000. Yeah.
I was going to say, and to just go further on that, it often says like your voice won't be used at all in the final recording, but it will sound exactly the same as your voice. Like that's the thing that gets left out.
They change it slightly.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and most of these training models are, so I trained this, let's say version 1 of Toby, and the model learns from that. And then for version 2, I basically need Toby to re-record for it to be good enough. So if anything, you most likely people will end up, if you want to really train a model, you have to record the same version like 3-4 times. So they have to put in the raw audio constantly. I think where it will go is the other way around, where I, as a voice actor, I'm going to have to pay a company to record an AI version of my voice.
Because that's the flip side, isn't it? Is the fact that if I am okay with doing that kind of like non-acting sort of stuff work, but I have a good profile and a good voice and a great model, then why not make money while I sleep?
Passive income. Yeah.
Well, exactly.
So then it becomes a selling point. So right now it costs between $5,000 and $10,000 to do that. So there's no way people are going to do it, because then also running the models after it costs too much money. So, but that's something that will happen in the next couple of years, I think.
Absolutely. Very interesting. What do you see? I mean, there are some glaringly obvious ones, but the moral and ethical issues around TTS have been in the headlines recently with Bev Standing, my previous guest, with the TikTok voice scandal. And it kind of comes down to something I'm not interested in at all, which is legal issues. I hate everything to do with fine print and contracts. So
instantly fall asleep when reading a contract.
I know.
I always think when reading a contract, why don't you use terms that I understand?
Yeah.
How can you make one sentence as convoluted as possible? But go on. Sorry.
So like the crux of it seems to be the fact that you're hired to do something like train this voice for this purpose. If that company then gets bought by a parent company, they inherit the assets of that, and that's what it sounds like happened with the TikTok case. We don't know exactly what happened, but it will come out in the wash. But like there is this issue of not knowing where that audio will go. And if I create a voice model, say, then someone can make me say like whatever they want. How do you stop it getting misused in the marketplace or pirated effectively? If someone pirated my voice and started selling me, I might not even know about it for a while.
I think there's two things there. Like you could essentially you can break down what happened to Bev Standing as a breach of contract somehow, right? Again, I also don't know the details, but assume that's the case where I was doing one thing, but it got used for something else, right? That's a breach of contract. And it's even sadder that it happened in this case in AI, but it happens occasionally. It happens in all types of VO where I do it for A and it gets used for B. Totally. Getting past that, you're right. So if I sell my AI version of a voice to one company and I use it for another, how do we deal with that? There's two items there. One is that at the same time that AI is developing, the tracement of and the protection and security of content is also increasing at a higher level, right? So you can, if you start to generate your audio files encryptedly in such a way that you can trace them back when being used, unless it's in an internal corporate structure, you always have a foothold on it. So let's say it happened, TikTok is integrating a new voice that you actually recorded for something else. You can trace it back to being your original recording or your original voice. There's ways to trace it back to you. So there's a technical protection side in the same way that AI is developing that can help voice actors. And the other part is, I don't think there's a very standard template for contracting on how to deal with AI to make sure that even when there is a full buyout, there still need to be limitations, because full buyout is something that we in the industry know is like kind of useless as a concept.
Right.
But it takes about 2 years to convince the client of how useless it really is. So you need to have the terminology buyout there and then still have a contract that is effectively not a buyout.
Right.
So with limitations. But I think we would have to build those contracts together. I would love to work with the union or with a company like Great for the Brain on that, to have a template and then structurally promote it. So whenever people purchase the services of an actor to train a model or to record a voice, you can use these kind of standard contracts that help prevent these kind of problems. But there is a use case where AI gets smart enough to turn Toby into Toby plus Rolf, and then we have Tolf, right? And who owns Tolf, right? So, but it really depends. Yeah, that might happen. I have no idea how to control that right now.
Yeah, it's an interesting world. Lots good.
But it's a very niche problem.
Yeah.
The Tolf situation is unlikely to be the future of AI.
Yeah, and I mean, you do meet voice doppelgangers. Like I have friends and family saying, "Oh, you voiced that new thing on TV," and I'm like, "No, I didn't." And I listen to it, and I don't think it sounds like me. But like there are people that do sound quite like me sometimes, and you can't go and sue them if they suddenly decide to do a voiceover. So, it's such a tricky area. Yeah. But I mean, I like this idea of having like voice marketplaces effectively, where voiceovers could create their own voices and sell them in some kind of partnership program perhaps. And perhaps there would even be a facility for people who aren't even voiceovers to start designing AI voices. I'm not sure. But, that's an interesting
So it's thinking creator first. So I think it comes back to the vision I shared earlier. If we think of the problems that are facing in the industry and think about a creator, and by this kind of creator, I think both sides, but this specifically the voice actor, how can you put them at the center of this? And then if we in Voice123 can give an overview, hey, these are the companies that are in AI. This is what it costs to record a voice here. That changes the dynamic of how we look at AI, right? And it exposes all these companies that are out there. Because at the voiceover community is if they really want something, they're quite strong.
Absolutely. So what's Voice123 doing in this new TTS environment? I mean, you don't, I guess, have to tell us the entire plan now, but are you formulating a strategy based on the research that you've done over the last 6 months in this report?
Yeah. So the idea would be to already have a character voices on Voice123 for a group of actors this year. But I'm not sure if character voices is the right way to go. Might be I also have just one version of Toby on my profile. Who's going to start with a small group, and then depending on how that goes, roll it out to others. But that would be my ideal version of it. Now, there's all these engineering complexities behind that, how to make that work in such a way that people actually enjoy using it. But yeah, I step one is that. The other step is I'm trying to collect is a bad word, but I'm trying to get exposed to as many AI and TTS building companies out there, and ideally allow them to have for voice actors to work with them on Voice123 directly and open.
Exactly, because I mean, you hold that position being a marketplace and having all those voice actors and clients.
And imagine as a TTS company that needs an AI voice, and you need to go to Voice123 because that's where AI voice is, and then there's this contract in the middle that protects the voice actor. That would be like a golden situation.
That would.
And for me, like this is not necessarily a revenue-driven idea. It's more that any network effect that puts Voice123 more at the center of VO, it's good for Voice123 in the long term. So that's the reason why I'm doing it.
Yeah, brilliant. Absolutely. Right. Well, I'm going to pivot out of TTS to an area that we touched on before, which is new voices wanting to get into voiceovers, because you've got this new guide called How to Get into Voiceover, which is part of the booth, which is kind of like your new kind of it's a resource for voice actors who are working already and people who are new to the industry. And there's lots of good stuff in there. So I encourage people to go to voice123.com/thebooth, and the voiceover guide is on there. What do you say to the sort of seasoned, grizzled voiceover actors who say that, there are too many newbies spoiling sort of the ground, and there just seem like there's far too many people these days. I'm obviously not one of them, but like there is the attitude out there that we shouldn't be training so many new voiceovers. Yeah,
I mean. Yeah, I also want everything for myself all the time, but that's not how the world works. I guess there's new talent coming in, and they're good. Sometimes they're not good. There's people that want to work with younger people. There's people that want to work with older people. There's room for plenty of people in this voiceover industry. Like audio is one of the fastest growing industries, especially in entertainment. It's the fastest growing industry. There's plenty of space. I think, if anything, be part of that educational wave, right? Don't push people out. Don't try to keep this small corner of the VO world for yourself, because that's how you're going to get kicked off. So as a older, grizzled veteran voice actors, I think they can be very open to whatever new type of work comes in, and they can learn from how the younger ones do succeed in VO, right? Because one of the other things to how VO has changed is, like, I think it's very clear that we're quite anti-agent, right? We came into existence thinking the whole agent model. Why? Right? Because it's a closed industry that is about networks, and these agents control these networks, and therefore you have to go through an agent to go to a client. So let's get out the agent. That's the plan. Now, but if there's an agent, you as an actor perform a different service than when you work directly with a client. Because if you're an actor with an agent, you're acting. If you're an actor without an agent, you're providing the whole service, right? And part of that whole service is being able to be good at customer success and being able to be on top of communication. And we can see these younger, new coming people that are not biased by how the industry works, really excelling at that. One of the things that we realized researching our clients is that they want three things. They want a good voice, obviously. They want a good quality. And by quality, I don't necessarily mean high acting skills, just want to have good audio quality most of the time, very consistent. The second part is that they want to have ease to work with. So they just want to have a person they can get along with, and people who are fast, right? So that's one of the reasons why I think the booth is not just for younger people. I think also the next generation should be aware, like the industry has changed, and what people need when buying a voiceover has also changed. If you look at our platinum members on Voice123, most of them are successful because they have some form of assistance. Either it's their partner with helping with admin and communication, or they have actually hired people to do so. They treated their business as a bit of an industry, as a bit of a company. Now, bringing it back to why we started with the voiceover guide in the booth in the first place, is that basically most people that either want to get into voice acting or they want to buy a voiceover for the first time are like me going to a conference talking to you. No idea how the shit goes. Can you walk me through it? So we realized that people who are using Voice123 for the first time, we shouldn't onboard them on what Voice123 is. We should onboard them on, hey, this is how the industry works, right? This is what is required of you from a voice actor perspective. Like these are all the terminology to start with. This is how you set rates. This is how you record. These are minimum requirements when talking to a client. Ideally, that's where the older generation helps those younger generation. Hey, don't undervalue yourself. don't do it for $50, and this is priced way more. I know you want to get started, but if you set your brand to be exclusive from the get-go, there's future in it, right? And from the voiceover buyer perspective, imagine having never heard of voiceover, and you're having to run the project management for your firm in your second week in the job, and you need to get a voiceover. You're going to Voice123, or you're going to Voices, or you're going anywhere, and you're confronted with a form that says usage. What? I don't know what that is, right? Or what does a minute cost? All these kind of things. Or why should I choose an accent? Or should I choose a male or a female or non-binary? What do I do here? So we realized that we need to build an educational space where people can learn these very basic things, while also working with more senior voice actors and exposing them, hey, this is how the industry is now. In a modern day VO, it's about customer service, and it's about audio quality, and it's about fast reply time. Things have changed, or this is how what AI will impact, how it will impact voiceover. We're trying to, instead of feeding this kind of material to all these other companies, we try to also be a space where we introduce people to the world of VO from both sides, and that's why the booth is there. That's why a guide to VO is there, and to have those basics, but also to have people updated about these industry trends that are constantly changing.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of the goals of Gravy for the Brain, of course, is to, That's
why we always promote them, because I think they're the best out there doing it right now. So ideally, we would refer people on the booth to go to Gravy for the Brain to get a course, right? Or to do a webinar on a specific function. We're not going into that part.
Yeah, we're like in 18 different countries now. It's kind of a worldwide thing. So I mean, it is.
Can I add one more thing to that?
Sure. Yeah.
It's very obvious that we never really realized, but I think what Voice123 can give the VO industry and the VO world is mostly insights about clients. The one reason you're in Voice123 is because there's work, right? Regardless of how we got started, who the people are. In the end, you go to Voice123 because there's work in VO, and clients come to us because there's this large database of people. I can find any voice that I want. They treat it like the Google of voiceover, right? We've always focused these kind of coaching sessions and these kind of training materials when it comes to voice actors about, I think, outdated version of what a voiceover buyer looks like. What Voice123 can do is keep people informed that this is what's happening now. Hey, conversational is now the most searched term. Get into it, right? Or we see IVRs dropping, change, or clients really like this kind of service when you add that to your portfolio when it comes to turnaround time, or these are popular financial admin accounts that most companies use if you want to work payments directly, get this kind of software. So I think that's where Voice123 can really leverage the 20 years of experience that we have by just being more transparent and more open and educating more people about, hey, this is what clients want. Instead of voice actors telling other voice actors what client wants, that's biased.
Absolutely. I mean, do you ever release sort of big data conclusions about your sort of the clients on there? Because I've definitely noticed between the platforms there's a difference in the kind of clients that you each attract because of your different advertising and SEO, etc. Do you sort of constantly measure that to make sure that you're still finding the right clients, or the clients that us voiceover artists have become used to?
Yeah, so thankfully there's a high sense of loyalty, but if you don't get the next type of client, then kind of as a platform, you're dead, right? So most of my focus is part of the team should always be focused on trying to get more work for voice actors. So we're trying to look who that new segment of content buyers is, and that's why we're also looking bigger than just VO, right? Most people work in VO, not directly but indirectly. So we do segment our user base. I wish I could see what the other companies have all the time. I know it partly. There's most of the data you can, through proper researching, you can do it publicly. But you can find it. So what is very common in the VO world is that a project that's posted on Voice123 is posted on Voices, is posted on Bodago, is posted on other ones, because it's basically clients hedging their bet. And voice actors are also on all the platforms. So if anything, the kind of job that flows through through our platform and other platforms, I think you're in a better position to make that comparison. Like we can provide the data from our end, but I would love to learn more from what the difference is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, interesting. One other thing I was going to say about the voiceover booth is like, what I think is really important when talking to sort of newbies about coming into the industry is like a reality check, in terms of like when you start, it is really hard and it takes ages to get that first gig. You know, I think it's about 90 is the average, 90 auditions to get one job, like in your first couple of years, which is pretty accurate. So you have to love it first, and just do it because you love doing it, as opposed to like trying to find a financial, incentive. And and I think it is fairly realistic, this report, this guide that you've made, which says it's common to fail about 50 to 60 online auditions before landing a job. And like, do you have an average sort of, do you pull stats on sort of, when people join, and if they join as a free member or a premium member, and when they sort of drop off? Is that a thing?
Yeah, so people who, especially, let's say that we call it the pandemic effect right now. Right? So there's a lot of people who bought memberships last year and then realize, holy crap, this is difficult. Right? So they're not renewing. Right. So, and we see that even without the pandemic, there's a lot of people who purchase in our case, a membership on our platform in the first time, very active in a couple of months, and realize, why am I not booking? Why am I not booking? Why am I not booking? And then steering away. So first year voice actors have a low renewal rate, is what we call it internally. And that's from the voice actor side. And because this industry is partly driven by fame, right? And fame also in VO, we're looking at a couple of top actors. That's why we have awards. Like there's all these different kind of awards in the VO industry compared to other industries that are creative. That's because we're so close to the entertainment. But everybody's looking at those people and said, if I want to be like Toby, I want to be like J. Michael, I want to be like those people, and I'm going to get there because I have a mic. Why not? But then they realize, okay, 60 to 70 to 80, 90 auditions, one job. And then that one job is paying like $100 or $200. That's not gonna fly. And we had an influx of thousands of users, I think 2 years ago, because one video that promoted free money, right? Go into VO, it's free money. And then all these people sign up and they post, and it's all not good enough. And then they all get disappointed. I think we're going to have these ebb and flows because it's quite of a closed off industry, and outside looking in, you think, I can do that. And then you realize you can't. Yeah, I can talk. People told me I have a great voice, but it's not about that. So yeah, there's always a high turnover rate for first time starters. But there's also, at the same time, once as a voice actor, you figured out, yes, I always need to bring in new people, and I need Voice123 to give me leads, and I go on Voice, I go on others to also do the same. The way that you stay in the industry is, of course, that you get those repeated clients. And you build that network, and they start to recommend you to others. And nurturing that relationship, so that first recording session together and that first deliverable, and then what happens afterwards, that's where you stay in the industry. That's not kind of data we have. I only have that because we talk to a lot of people, and that's how we see people who are successful, how they are performing. But to go back to your original question, yes, we have a lot of people who get started and then get disappointed.
There must be a lot of like Focusrite, Scarlett, Solo interfaces coming up for social eBay at the moment.
Yeah,
like
I think so.
Interface. Yeah. Now, I realised that we've spent so long talking about TTS, we're kind of going over time. Hopefully that's okay with you. I'm enjoying the conversation.
Yeah, no, I'm enjoying it as well.
Fantastic. So you are also, this is a completely different topic now, you're also one of the leading kind of voices in the application of like the new remote workforce, ways of running corporations, large corporations, with a completely distributed workforce around the globe. You were doing this well before the pandemic, I believe.
Yeah.
And you must have had a lot of people asking you how to do it, because everyone's had to do it. Since COVID.
And in COVID, working remotely is different than working remotely without COVID. Because with COVID, working in a lockdown sucks whether you're working from home or you're working in the office, right? A lockdown is a lockdown. So I think maybe people are not enjoying remote work because of the circumstances that we are in right now. If you also have to homeschool your kids and you have to work from home with both your partners, then it's it's going to be tough. But yeah, so we have, out of necessity, Voice123 has built as a remote company, and every sequential company that Alex has founded has also been remote. So I have helped him set up multiple companies in a remote structure. The reason why we got to be remote is that Alex and Tanya, who were living in the US at the time, started the company, wanted to hire talent. Most of their network was in Latin America, so they tried to bring in people to San Francisco, and there were visa issues. And then, okay, screw that, let's just do a local office. And then, hey, why don't we just make a digital space where we built this company? And that sort of organically grew in what we are right now. We have like 12 different nationalities, or we're mostly talking time zones. We have all the different time zones in our company, and we try to build a digital structure for us to work together. And it's basically, we're meeting most of the time like you and I are meeting now. And then we try to do 1 or 2 company-wide retreats every year, and we try to get teams to work together in a space, because in the end, you need to also see the people that you're working with in real time. Because right now, for example, we could be the same height. It's the number one question when we do a retreat is judge everybody's height, and everybody gets it always wrong, right? Because you have no idea how tall the person is. So you have to do this kind of retreat to have super bonding. But in terms of how it changes your life to be remote, working, like I moved back to the Netherlands. I was living in Colombia, working in the US, Colombia, and the Netherlands in the last couple of years. I moved back to the Netherlands and work in my home office, and my lunches are with friends and family. Like the whole concept of office work, especially in industries where you're required to work 5 to 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, let's say 8 to 10 hours a day, then you have a very small social environment. Why I think if you have remote work, people can become active in the community, etc. It's one of the reasons why I'm so in love with remote work, is that it allows me to volunteer here instead of to do with coworkers. Not that I don't love my coworkers, but there's all these beneficial items from remote work now. In the pandemic, it's been accelerating how people do remote work, and I finally was able to help other companies make that switch. So most of the entrepreneurs that always looked at us saying, "Yeah, you're stupid, you do remote." At the moment they had to go remote, how do you do this? And what remote work basically forces you to do is you write down or you document how you work at a detailed level. Not to micromanage people, but to set expectations, because people work in different time zones, don't work away from each other. If there's a question, I can't really tap you on the shoulder. I have to send you a quick text or something. You don't want to do that. So what we have is we have a massive handbook. We say, this is how we work together. We have it on a detailed level of how you organize yourself in a Zoom environment, right? Never camera off, that kind of stuff. So we have all these details, behavior expectations, and how we communicate with each other. And it makes work go very efficient. And as a Dutch guy, I like efficiency.
There's lots of similarities, actually. I've just listened to you say what those things are between being like a global working voiceover artist. I was thinking, because like, I mean, I work in, 4 or 5 different time zones regularly. So I'm like, whenever I'm conversing with someone, I'm automatically doing the calculations and adding or taking away a day, because I'm in New Zealand, which usually means taking away
yours
a day.
Is extra hard. Yeah,
exactly. So, and also the fact that like there is this, there's an etiquette in communication with clients and stuff, and it has to be, everyone has to be on the same page effectively. So like it is like having, my own voiceover business is a lot like having having a remote workforce, except the workforce are kind of my clients, which is quite interesting. Yeah, and I assume, especially with clients, you have to set these kind of expectations also in a call, because even though they're working with you, you're again the expert, so walking them through it. And I think the other similarity is that even though it's a lot of fun to do all this remote work, it also has the risk of being isolating a bit, or there's the potential to be more lonely compared to going to an office, even though people in offices can also feel lonely, of course. So that's why I think these big conferences like One Voice conferences are so much fun, because people get to finally talk to each other, and then you feel that vibe of, I've been in this studio and it's so fun to be here, and that kind of stuff. So it has, although those peaks are even higher compared to other congresses. I think if you go to a conference
let's say in accountancy, it's a different vibe because they're surrounded by accountants all the time. And when voice actors meet, and we get to go to those conferences, we're just so excited to be out.
Absolutely. And I mean, I feel like there's so much more scope these days. We were talking before, you live in the country, I live, way out in the middle of the New Zealand jungle. And I used to live in Auckland and had an apartment that overlooked the Auckland Harbour Bridge, and there were always traffic problems from people trying to get from one half of Auckland to the other, everyone filing across the bridge just to sit in their cubicles in their office and then talk to people on Zoom or whatever. And it seemed ridiculous to me. It was like, surely we have the technology where people could do most of this work at home, and why between the hours of 9 and 5? It's like, as long as you've just got tasks for people to do, just give them the task, and just your job is to solve this task. It's not to be in the office at this time to this time. And I feel like COVID has made a massive shift towards a task-based economy as opposed to an hours-based economy.
That's the biggest change, I think. That's for us also was the nicest change. Like already years ago, we worked with the concept of, hey, this is your responsibility. This is the impact that you need to have. Tell us what we need. Give us your roadmap, and then you work back. It's not a boss telling an employee saying, okay, from 8 to 5, and then you do this from 8 to 5, and end of the week you need to deliver this. That's not how life works. That's not how your professional office space needs to work. You need to be more in control. But it's also harder because from two sides. One, I think because of the pandemic, a lot of leaders who work and who lead from a position of control are going to fail massively in a remote setting because they feel they're in control when they can see people work. And well, if you're at home, especially with kids, life happens also, right? You're not able to only take a break from 10 to 10:15 because my daughter has to go to the toilet. I need to help her out, right? Or that was a rough breakfast to get the kids started. I need an hour break. Like if you're on a human level, you want to be more in control of that time, but leaders want to be in control of your time. And those leaders tend to fail. People in remote settings from a team member perspective also tend to fail when they're waiting. So whenever you're working from home, you need to have a sense of proactivity, and you need to have a sense of accountability for the goals that you have. And you need to really get help in the problems that you need to solve now. So you need to be more in control. You're not necessarily waiting for your leader to ask you how you're doing or for your leader to tell you what you should be doing. But on a personal level, you need to be very proactive. And that's where a lot of people find it hard, especially if they're working in industries where where they don't feel an expert in. So that changes two core dynamics, leadership and team member behavior. And I think if you get that clear and you hire the right people in the right place, then remote work can be a lot of fun and very challenging. Actually, it could be so challenging that you have to restrict people from working too much. One thing shows is that people keep on working, and you need to have really clear routines. Like, I'm not going into this room if I'm not working. Right? I have on my computer, I have a setting of work and a setting of not work. Never mix those concepts. I even change outfits when I stop working to get those kind of routines going, because I think the risk is burnout.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've definitely had brushes with burnout when you just try and do too much. And so we've transitioned beautifully from a voiceover podcast into like a business leadership podcast, which I love. But
good mix.
We must wrap it up at some time. I'm having lots of fun. Is there anything that you'd like to cover from a Voice123 perspective that hasn't come up?
I wanted to mostly connect just with you because it's been a while that we talked. So I enjoyed. Thanks for this. I wanted to have people learn about the booth and why we have those kind of educational materials there. And I always enjoy talking about AI. I think there's not much else that I wanted to share. No, I think this is good.
Cool. I'm excited to read the full report about the TTS experience when it comes out, and to see. Yeah,
we'll share it as soon as it's live.
Yeah, brilliant. And to see some of those extra features sort of come off the dev rank and get implemented. Is there any way that people can? The best way to get in touch for sort of like feature requests, or if they have problems with Voice123?
It's a good question. It's on that public roadmap that you shared. You can basically indicate that you're interested to be part of testing pools.
Yeah, right.
So if you type in if you Google public roadmap Voice123, it brings you to a link where you first of all see what we're working on, and second of all, you can leave your feedback. And if you leave your email there, then we'll add you to a pool of those people that get exposed to earlier development cycles. But it won't be perfect because the way that we develop is very minimalistic, and then if it works, we scale it. So, but you get exposed to like beta functions, etc.
Totally. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I look forward to connecting with you at least on a 6-monthly basis and having a good chat because it was fun
That would be
today.
nice. That would be nice. No, thanks,
Fantastic.
Toby.